Hello everybody and welcome to Amphlett Reviews, back with a Hong Kong content review. Sorry for my recent absence, guys. I've been feeling a little bit under the weather recently and not been really watching much Hong Kong movies. I've been kind of, just focusing on kind of work and other kind of like things in life I need to kind of focus on, and I'm going to be slowly kind of dishing back into the wonderful world of Hong Kong cinema and continuing on my original journey with Lau Kar-leung's kind of career. And I've decided to go backwards this time and dive into his very first entry, his very first film he did, which is The Spiritual Boxer, which is part of the 88 film edition. Part of that Asian collection, it is number 21 in the spine. This edition comes with a limited edition slipcase, which you can see there. There you go, and you got the alternative artwork. There you go, booklet and all that. This is a pretty easy access kind of film. I don't think it's particularly out of print. I don't know about the slipcase. I think that is a little bit harder to get. I did actually get this from Flop, a part of their 2 for 15 deal a long time ago, and it's been on the shelf, and finally now I got a chance to watch it and review it for you guys now. Diving straight into this one, guys. It's released in 1975, not starring a lot of his kind of usuals. This is one of his very first films. The Spiritual Boxer's main leading character and star is Wan Yu, who plays a con artist who's basically going around from town to town and basically kind of acting as a kind of tapping into the gods, essentially, kind of, medium a little bit, and reenacting kind of like the monkey god, basically, in the first portion of the film, into basically kind of, giving him wealth and kind of, obeying his kind of wishes. And basically, you wouldn't define the gods, would you? So he puts on this bit of a show, kind of this kind of like, the seance, and then he kind of reenacts the kind of the action of the Monkey King, and, jumping around, kind of throwing himself in there, has this kind of knife, which is kind of this very blunted kind of edge. It's basically like a wooden kind of, sword. And he's saying, I'm indestructible. And, he's kind of got this really awesome kind of martial arts skill set to kind of back it up as well. So he kind of challenges or anyone who kind of gets in his way, he can match that with the energy and the kind of this enthusiasm as the Monkey King, essentially. And this lands me in a little bit of hot water with some of the local kind of residents. And he goes from place to place and people are onto him. And the film essentially is an hour and a half of kind of buffoonery, but like just kind of back and forth, kind of, like kind of comedy, a bit of kind of mischief. I wouldn't say it's kind of silly or kind of slapstick compared to some of the others I've seen of him within the kind of the 36 Chamber kind of sequels. And I wouldn't say it's as smart as like Dirty Ho, for instance, where that comedy is really defined and really kind of clever and kind of like, I know that kind of thing, kind of, kind of comedy. That's kind of really defined, really kind of my taste and kind of, comedy that I've seen of him. This is somewhere in between the middle. It's kind of finding that kind of, even ground. It's a kind of a low budget film. It's kind of a smaller movie. It doesn't have a lot of action. So if you're expecting a lot of martial arts, a lot of fighting, you're not really going to get much of it on here, unfortunately. You've got this really interesting kind of introduction, kind of the opening of showing these kind of like guys who obviously are indestructible, and they're showing their skill sets and their abilities, and this lands them into a specific kind of plot point within the third act of the film. He has this kind of weird encounter with this other woman who helps him during one of the sequences, and wants to learn the trade and wants to kind of know what he does. And she becomes a semi-apprentice of him, and that's quite interesting. Their relationship isn't kind of romantic in nature, but just more kind of like mutual respect and like, hey, I want to learn what you do and I don't want to do what I was doing before, essentially. There's not really a lot I can say about this film. It's very light. It's very kind of fun, I would say, definitely, for sure. It's definitely entertaining. I definitely enjoyed my time with it. However, depending on what you're after and what your mood is, if you're after a martial arts film, this isn't it. If you're after a bit of light comedy, a bit of light entertainment with a unique concept, this definitely could be something for you. And I know there is a spiritual sequel to this called The Shadow Boxing, which was released a lot later on during the 80s, which is almost like a good almost 10 years after this, returning back the actor from this film and some of the cast and crew. So that's interesting to see. He did a follow-up spiritual kind of sequel to this. I'm curious to see what that film has to offer, whether it is a bit more defined and, where he takes that kind of character and that kind of idea of, con artistry to the next level. What can he do next, essentially, which is quite interesting. So in terms of a kind of a featured kind of debut, it's exactly what I expected. It's not perfect. It's not, a standout film by any means. It's definitely not something that you need to watch right this second. It's an interesting kind of add-on to the kind of the filmography of this director, and nice to see where the kind of it all leads up to essentially to some of the bigger entries of this director. Next up is the Challenges of the Masters, which I got on the Arrow Edition box set, which I'll be watching next. I'll be watching this in kind of timeline order, release order, so that'll be the next one up, guys. What are your thoughts and opinions on the spiritual box? Please comment down below. What are your thoughts on the spiritual sequel, the Shadow Boxing? Love to know your thoughts and opinions, guys. Please comment down below on that one. In the meantime, guys, Amphlett Reviews, signing out.